Cool. Hey, Luke. Hey, Michiel. Just wanted to get together and chat a little bit about Profila. A lot of people don't remember, when we started, why we started, and how we even met. So just wanted to catch up today and have a chat around how we all got introduced to each other, some of the reasons why you liked Profila in the first place, what your belief system is behind it, and also just to get to know you a little bit better for the community who will watch this video. So it's free forum, ask any questions, make a joke, talk about Star Wars if you want it. It's really not a problem. Because those are the things that bring us back to being human, right? We've got a great project that we all fundamentally believe in. That's why we're here for the last 5 years. That's also one of the reasons to just inform the community again as to why we even started this project, and what's fueling us to continue, what's the grit behind the passion and mission. That's different to a lot of other startups today. You just quit and run, as soon as the crypto market crashes or as soon as things get hard, which I think is a great story for us. And also the three of us as co-founders, that we really have come a long way together. So just wanted to go around the table, and I'll start with you, Michiel, because we met up first in 2017. Actually, I can't believe
November 2017. That's a long while ago.
Yeah. I'll give my backstory to how I found you, but let's jump over to you first, Michiel. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, family, and then Profila, how you got to it.
So my name is Michiel Marui. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Profila. And so who am I? I'm a Belgian, 33 years old now. I'm a technology and privacy lawyer. I've worked for multiple years in international law firms, advising companies on how to treat their customer data and how to be GDPR compliant. And so I did that for 7 years before I moved to Geneva, European Center for Nuclear Research, doing work there as a knowledge transfer lawyer. And about that time, I was looking for something to do in Geneva because I left my friends, I left my wife. I didn't really leave, but I physically left my friends and wife to come to Geneva for a while. And so I had more time on my hands, and I wanted to look for a hobby, which brought me to AngelList. And that's exactly where I found this announcement by Sean looking for a co-founder with legal experience, working on a project around data and improving the internet. And so it really spoke to me for multiple reasons. First, my private experience on the internet wasn't great. I have 10,000 unread emails in my Hotmail account. I often browse for products that I don't want to buy, but then get a lot of posts for these products, or in the other way around, I buy a product, but I keep getting on ads. And so from my personal experience, the story of Profila in the beginning days looked very interesting to me, but also my experience as a lawyer is what attracted me to this project. I worked on this transition of the GDPR. So many people think that GDPR was like the birthplace of privacy legislation, but that was not the case. GDPR was mainly like this European-wide codification that made companies very scared. They're very scared because there was this 2 to 4% global turnover penalty for breaching the GDPR. And so for law firms, this was the golden years of privacy consultancy. Every company all of a sudden was like, okay, GDPR compliance, what do I need to do? How do I need to update my policies? And how do I need to shovel some paperwork to make sure I don't get a fine? And I really saw it like that, companies trying to avoid the fine of the GDPR, whereas both in my professional and private experience, GDPR was so much more. GDPR was this step by the legislator to make companies accountable towards their consumers. There was this huge part, which is not just compliance, but which is you as a company need to tell your individual consumers how you're doing things with their data. And you need to tell them that they have something called data subject rights, that they can ask to delete data, and you need to be transparent, and you need to design your products with privacy in mind. And so this entire aspect of the GDPR passed by these companies as if it didn't exist. And so when Profila came on my plate, let's say in that AngelList announcement, that was directly what I consider the whole in practice, how the GDPR could be applied for the benefits of individuals. So that's still what I think today. Today, I think this piece of legislation is a great thing, the General Data Privacy Regulation. I think a lot of other regions and other countries have taken this as an example and almost copy-pasted it into their privacy legislation. And I think projects like Profila will make it so that that privacy becomes way more, let's say, easy, low level, accessible for people, and it's not just company compliance exercise. So that's a bit my context on how I joined Profila, which is now
Awesome.
5 years. And so we evolved past this privacy only company into something way larger than I imagined at that time. But I think the fundamentals are still there. We're building a product for people to have a better experience online with all of the brands they have interaction with, and so that I think that vision is still there.
Yeah, I think that privacy at the core is, that's why we keep doing this, right? And when we met, our first conversations were all around privacy. What is the web going to look like in the future, and how do we change things? Just before I jump on to Luke introducing himself, Michiel, you also did a startup before, which you exited. So you've got some experience outside of the privacy space. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the first company I organized was when I lived still in Brussels. It was called Scooty. Scooty was an electronic scooter sharing system that had in the beginning only 25 scooters in Brussels. And eventually it grew over 200 scooters and 3,000 customers in Brussels and in Antwerp. But for all the people who would listen to this little video, this was before the scooter days, so there were not the little steps and shared scooters. They weren't there. We were the first service here. And so, we started from scratch. We bought scooters in Spain. We bought technology in Germany. We found a software engineer, made an application, and then just started from scratch, and a very operational startup. So my wife will still remember the 20 or 30 batteries that were zooming in our bathroom. And after my law firm days, I would drive around Brussels to change batteries at night, or to pick up scooters that were damaged or stolen. A very fun experience of a first startup. But after 2 years, it was acquired by Ubico, which is the let's say mobility startup within Europcar, so the Europcar mobility group. And then it was discontinued in 2019, apparently during the COVID years, as Europcar was in financial problems itself. But yeah, there was a very fun first experience of starting and having an idea, then putting it on the streets, getting customers, and then selling the baby.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And when you told me that story too, it was unusual to see what you stereotype as a lawyer, from privacy, and then when I get to know you, the stories of your startup and seeing how you joel and party, and
people couldn't believe that I had three phones. So I had my private phone, of course. Then I had my law firm BlackBerry, which was still a BlackBerry at that time, and then I had this Scooty service phone where in the middle of a law firm meeting, I would get a call from somebody saying, the scooter doesn't start, or there's like a red light. I was awesome, definitely multitasking. Yeah,
so grinding it and starting up, and that's awesome. We'll come back to Michiel around some other parts of your background and applicable to the business now. But Luke, tell us a little bit about you. How we met, your colleague, and just some of your passions and background.
Yeah, we met in April of 2018 at a sushi place here in Lucerne, brought together by a business partner of both of us. And then met at my home, I think probably the next week or something. You were living in Vegas at the time. And you were saying the things that I was thinking about anyway. I'm a political scientist by education and by mindset. So the idea of individual sovereignty and individual agency is core to how I see the world and how the world should be. And you were talking about those sort of things. And like everybody, you can easily see the problems with social media, with tracking, with all these sort of things. Everyone can see the problem. The challenge is that, well, in my opinion, the current paradigm is beyond reform. And your only choice is either to accept that or to nibble around the edges with GDPR, things like that, or to conceive from the bottom up what good looks like, what a better system looks like, and not just for individuals, but also for brands. An empowered customer is a profitable customer, is a better customer. So that's the challenge, is coming up with an ecosystem that serves all parties better than what serves now, what works now. And the challenge is always, where do you start? How do you get something like this started? So you can't just make an app. You have to actually think about how this is going to evolve beyond that, and how individuals can say, I'm fine with no advertising for the next couple months, or I don't need to be buying anything for the next couple months. But when I do, for brands that respect that kind of privacy and those kind of preferences, I'll come back to them. And we figure out very quickly we can't acquire customers for brands, but we can help them keep them. And they're the most profitable. Customer acquisition is sexy, but customer retention is profitable. And so, yeah, we evolved from privacy, and I think our evolution came from the hundreds and hundreds of conversations we were having with privacy lawyers, with brands, with individuals, and saying, well, we can't just solve this problem because it's just the beachhead of something larger. And that's what a lot of my career has been about. I came to Switzerland in 2012, so a couple years before, with a pharmaceutical company. I was an enterprise architect, which was actually the first job I ever had that someone else said, here's your job description. Every other job I've had in my career, I've basically gone to whatever company I was working for and said, you need somebody doing this or that. And they said, okay, go ahead and do that. Before Switzerland, I was in Holland, actually with the same company for 12 years, both animal health and pharmaceutical, kind of the early days of the web, businesses using the web, and helped build up an internal agency that served all of our commercial operations around the world. It was the best in our industry by far. And it helped me understand how to do things at scale, how to do things flexible, where everything we did was species agnostic, because we were obviously an animal health company, but also language agnostic, market agnostic. We could build something and deploy it to 50 countries very, very quickly. And that was a nice superpower to develop over the years. Before that, I came to Holland via kind of an interesting university time, where I was an exchange student in Ukraine soon after its independence, between high school and college. They call that a gap year. And then lived in Russia and various places throughout my university times, and study abroad sort of things. Did some work with the G7 and the UNDP, which at that point was coordinating all the aid money coming into Russia and the former Soviet Union in the 1990s. So I got a trip to Uzbekistan out of that gig. So, but after living in Ukraine as an 18-year-old, I knew that my future was in Europe. I love living in Europe. I love being able to get on a plane and go to 40, 50 different countries very easily. And also just working in an international environment from a very early age. My first year in Holland was spent on an integration team for a German-Dutch merger, which I always say should have awarded me an MBA after that, because it was an amazing experience to be a fly on the wall for those discussions.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of jobs that don't exist now or didn't exist before, and mostly it's about problem solving. Taking a situation that is not ideal and understanding how to solve the problem very elegantly, very simply. And that's what we've been trying to do with Profila, is to keep drilling it down to the most simple version, but the most powerful. And at the end of the day, we want to give brands insights, and we want to give individuals superpowers. And we think that's a much better model for how any kind of organization deals with people that it's dealing with over time, and allow an individual to say, I've got the best insights and data anywhere in the world. You're not going to get anything by stalking me or tracking me. Come to me, and we'll have a good relationship, and we'll all get what we want out of it. So that's kind of our mentality, and that's a nice fountainhead for how we think about features. So it's not what's going to make us revenue. It's not what's easy to develop. It's what superpowers can give people, and with the mentality of, again, an empowered citizen or empowered customer is a more profitable customer, or a better customer for any organization, whether it's commercial or a charity or a church or whatever. So that's a bit about me.
What I love too, when we first met and came to your apartment, and on the table was this huge spread of like an ecosystem play and all these like diagrams everywhere, and every session we had was this like 60,000 foot view, but then with detailed thought behind it, and that was how we've evolved, I think, which is amazing. It's not been through our own assumptions. We've had a vision and a mission and an objective, but thousands and thousands of conversations and hours and thought, which is the most valuable asset. And what I appreciated too from discussions with you is your philosophical and more, I suppose, stronger academic background than mine, which is, challenges thought processes and put some deeper theory behind, concepts of what we're trying to do, which really helped. So I think the combination of the three of us is worked out, because we've got different skills and bringing different levels of energy to the team, which is smart. But something that I have to bring up, I mean, you're a sports fanatic. It's NFL, football, soccer, basketball, baseball. What's your favorite? Just give us a snapshot of what's your favorite.
I think the one that probably the NFL, because that's the one thing I look forward to the most. Because it's also I can't separate it from how I think about the world. It's by far the most dynamic, well-run sports league in the world by a long stretch. And actually, this is I think one of the reasons is it's how they. When I used to do digital strategy consulting, I'd always ask my customers, what business do your customers think you're in? Because a lot of times it's different than what you think you're in. And the NFL understands it's in the entertainment business, not the sports business. So it constantly evolves the sport. It constantly tries things. It's constantly trying to evolve in a way, and its iteration of evolution is remarkable, and it's almost comical sometimes. Even when I'm watching the World Cup, to see how immature the production values or how they kind of market it and such compared to the NFL. So it's nice for me. It's a nice template for how to think about things in a larger scope than just what's going on the pitch.
First time anyone's invited me to come over and watch sports, and then I had a training session before I was allowed to watch the sport.
Well, that's about your enjoyment.
It was really cool.
Because I think and actually I've got some folks coming over next week for a game, and I was thinking about, okay, how can I add to their enjoyment by giving them 4 or 5 things that if they understand that, they'll be able to understand what they're seeing a lot better. Because it's the most complex sport rule-wise, but it's also in many ways the most understandable, because it's a warlike process of territory and men smashing into each other. So
it's the reason I relate, because obviously I'm from South Africa, so the rugby is a big thing there, and similar concept, although I still prefer rugby because we don't wear pads and helmets, so but we won't compare them. That'll be for another session. Sure. But I love your passion behind your sport, and the knowledge base that you have for anything you choose to be interested in is phenomenal. I can't recall that type of data to my mind. But
so Sean, your turn.
Hey, so where does the story start? It's been quite a few years. I actually went through some of my history of emails. Actually, I did 3 years of archiving of emails in December, and I went right back to 2006 and then 2009, where the concepts for Profila started. So my background has been mainly in mobile applications. I started my first job actually in installing computers onto trucks to measure telematics and speed and fuel consumption. And so it's always been around the computer and getting information out of it. But then did route accounting systems, so that's handhelds in trucks and generating invoices. And in the FMCG business, that's when I started my first mobile project, probably in 1999 already. In 1997, I did a startup. So that's quite a while ago, giving away a bit of my age. But that was developed a route accounting prototype and sold that for some shares into a logistics company in South Africa. And that was the bug. So it was that innovative spirit of trying to find a solution for a problem in a company, build something, and then get it to an operational state, and then moving on to the next thing. So I've always had a 2-year type cycle in my career, going into companies, solutioning, and building a business. And I did mobile applications into other businesses internet solutions, one in South Africa and then in Johannesburg in South Africa. And then finally went into the telco world, where helped build out cloud hosting application services. So it's always been in software, product management, telecommunications, but mobile and mobile apps has always been the core. And then the spark for privacy came in the telco space, because we're doing a project on with Google actually back then, and they actually sold their enterprise search servers. I remember the big yellow server coming in, and we installed it. And the power of that thing, even then, was phenomenal, because you could just point it to a data set and there it's got everything. And obviously in the telco space, we deal with petabytes of data around people, so who did you call, where to go, it's all protected. But that concept of how are we ever as people going to get control, of who sees our data, what is the value of it to us, was there right from 2006. And then 2009, actually cringe at the name now, but at my first pitch around the concept was called mycentralrecord.com back in the MySpace type of days, and pitched that to several investors and got some interest even in the opcos, but timing was everything then. And moved to Europe in 2010 with family. So I've got 2 lovely children and brought them to Switzerland with my wife as well. And in 2010, but 2015, the spark hit again because it was just the right time. That's when Profila was registered as a company in Switzerland. I remember searching and finding the domain. I think that was around 2012, Profila. And people always, sometimes have a different connotation for the name Profila, because, aren't you profiling me and so on, So the concept, just so people know, was quite simple. It's the profile is your own, it's your asset, it's your profile. And that's our intention, is to change Profila, which just sounds more hip and cool, into something that you own and control, and that you tell people, hey, if you want to get to know me, go and have a look at my Profila. So like Google, we'll make it a word that's very commonly used in the future around Profila. And in 16 actually took it seriously, but I did a little prototype of a privacy platform, similar to what Michiel was saying. Was GDPR was the thing. This was pre-GDPR in 2018, but built a prototype with a company in Poland, actually, around data rights management, rights assertions, telling companies, how you exercise your rights with them, which was quite cool. Took that to the Web Summit with my son, actually, in Lisbon in 2016, and presented that as an alpha startup. That was the first time Profila was put onto public display, I think. And at that event was the catalyst I needed to take it seriously, because so many people just kind of said, we have to do something about this. The core concept of I want privacy, but I didn't know what to do about it, was validated. And then got a direct message at that event from the then CTO of Facebook, before all of their problems, saying, yeah, we're going to need solutions like this. So maybe he knew something was brewing at the time. And from there, it was, okay, I have to do this. And it took an opportunity in 2017 to leave my employer and go hunting for co-founders, and found Michiel. That's when I put the advert out to take it seriously, and I went full-time into Profila. I've been full-time on Profila since 2017. And yeah, the mission has evolved. It started with privacy, and that's coming back to the conversation we had. We spent about a year with CERN itself. Michiel introduced us to the privacy department there. And a lot of that was just collaboration around, this is where the internet was born. Where do we think privacy is going to go in the future? But we never started with the intent of just quickly building a product, and trying to monetize it. We started with, this is quite a big problem to solve. What are we going to solve? And we could have released 2 or 3 products. In fact, Luke, you'll probably remember, and Michiel, that when we were with CERN there, we developed a prototype, which was like a chat interaction for privacy, just to say, how would you talk to brands or companies in the future, about privacy? And that was one pivot, that we understood what companies wanted. I remember doing a presentation at CERN there, and we had Nestle and quite a few other bigger brands there. and put up your hands, if you want this privacy for yourself and if your company needs it, and everyone's hand was up. But I think from there was the evolution of, well, privacy by itself is not enough, okay? Because at the time, there were a lot of startups, and going into 2018, there were a lot of startups, around assert your rights, manage your privacy, take control. And unfortunately, none of them have really taken off because privacy in isolation is not the solution. Okay, it's a core problem and a root cause. But as I said earlier, I like the way we forced ourselves to listen. So from that year and after CERN, we engaged with University of St. Gallen. We managed to do research with their MBA students. And they were the ones who actually gave us the biggest hint towards what the right direction is. Because, privacy is important. We all want it, but we don't know how to go and get it in a digital space currently. But the second is data is valuable. People know that now because of Facebook making so much money out of it. But how do I monetize or control my data was feedback from them. We know it's valuable, but how do I get some value for it? And the third, though, was the most important part of our pivot was we want something back. Okay, so we want value. And that's after that research is where we settled on our model, which is digital agency and choice and privacy for people and better relationships, but in exchange for value. And that's where we started including new advisors in the ad tech space. I think I found Mikko Kotila from online searching, and he was very vocal around, how advertising has been the main industry that's at fault in damaging our privacy and our rights. That's just about how we got there quickly. And some asides, if people don't know, the contract for the web, we contributed quite significantly to the consumer part. I remember being in workshop sessions with the French and German government, Facebook in the room as well, having healthy debates around, what do you want the future to look like? And I think that's something which also resonated with me is nobody inherently wants to do something bad. They're trapped in bad business models, but the people around the table representing those companies all wanted to do the right thing, but there's systems and mechanisms which have grown too big. And that's what, Luke, you said earlier. I'll come back to you guys now just for some comment, is when there's a problem that's too big, sometimes people don't understand the concept of how do I change it. And you have to do something different and give them a better way versus trying to change a current paradigm. And I think that's what we stumbled on. And we'll come to what we've been doing for the last 2.5 years then since. But I think that's a decent recap of how we came to our current mission and the focus of the platform. But Luke, back to you on just that concept of when something's too big to grasp and understand. It's how do we change that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you have to understand is the interests of the different parties. And like you said, brands don't want to do bad things, but the tools they have, the environment they work in, they're trying to sell products, they're trying to sell services. And these are the tools they have. These are the tracking tools, these are the social media tools. They can't take the high ground and say, well, I'm not going to use these because it violates my mores. Other companies are doing it. So they're in a competitive environment. And that eventually will be good for us because a brand will see other brands succeeding on Profila. Okay, well, obviously this is the future. This is how things will work in the future. You can't stalk people, you talk to them instead. And it's just a question of where that tipping point is of when that just becomes the norm. So essentially we're changing standards, and we have one standard that evolved from what the internet was supposed to be, but very quickly evolved in a different direction. Okay, how can we reclaim that? But again, if we were just idealistic about privacy and just individuals, then there'd be no incentive for brands to do that. So and we saw they talk about what we were seeing in the market. We were seeing some very adversarial companies who hated companies and hated governments, and it was all about putting your data in a NAS in your basement and under lock and key. Well, there's not much of a market for that. You have to understand that I want things, I want products, I want services, and I want to find companies that can provide that. How can that relationship be better? So we're actually focusing on the relationships not the actors. I think that was key to helping us understand what these mechanisms will be. That, you know, I want to sell you things that are relevant for you. To do that, I need to know more about you, but it has to be in a trusted environment for you to actually provide that. And I also want an environment where you can provide private feedback, which is difficult now. We've talked with folks who suffer with managing TripAdvisor because it's public performance, and so much of our world now is public performance. And I would say there's a place for private. So we're not trying to be another social media platform. We don't want to be social. It's private. Me and the brands that I want in my life on my terms, my cadence, with my information, and that they can't get anything better out there.
Absolutely, and I think that hits the nail on the head. What we assume too is, you know, the brands and companies are still spending their money in these different platforms to communicate and get to know customers, because that's the only place at the moment. And that's what we're building at Profila, is an alternative approach, a totally new platform, you know, controlled by people who want a relationship with companies. So yeah, we don't focus on the acquisition side, Luke, as you said earlier, but we focus on anything else after that. And like you said, we're not fundamentalists around privacy or nothing. It's everyone's choice, and that's why I think our mission is ordered in the right way, which is digital agency, you know, which is, if I choose to share all my data with a company that I love, so be it, you know, cool. But as soon as I want to claw that back and then have a choice to stop that and then to reclaim some privacy because my life's changed, you know, that's my right. Maybe I'm not receiving the value I used to, you know, and value isn't only ads. You know, we've done a lot of work in healthcare. I spent about a year on trips back and forth to Boston and the States, understanding the healthcare systems and challenges in the US. You know, this exchange of data is in every industry, and getting value back for it is what people want. You know, they want better health, they want better products, they want better skiing trips, they want better sneakers. So hopefully we're going to do that in a different way and solve the problem. But Michiel, I think one thing I wanted to touch on too, which was, you know, our assumption that these legals that have come in and so on is what we're seeing. A lot of companies are trying to adhere to it, but a lot of it's on paper. You know, a lot of them haven't actually taken the step to make the change in their organization to operationalize, you know, the privacy and the approach. Do you think they're just stuck, or are we on the right path, that there's no real other platforms, you know, for them to go to? What are you seeing in that whole privacy space? Are companies just wait and see? And before you jump in, is because what angers me is I see a lot of these companies getting these massive fines, which from a person seems massive, but for them, you know, it's 11 weeks of revenue, the last fine that Google got, you know, or 11 months. It's ridiculous. It's a slap on the wrists, and they're still doing what they're doing. So what's needed to make the market change and brands change?
Well, like I mentioned in the beginning, I think in 2018 it was more of a compliance risk, and so I think there was a peak in awareness of, okay, we need to take care of this. We need to make a clean house. We need to make sure that we won't get any fines. And now indeed these first fines are coming, but you've not seen the 2% or 4% fines yet for large multinationals. That was a big question mark amongst lawyers, but also amongst companies. Will a first infraction or a second infraction or a large infraction directly give you such a large fine? And in practice, we see that that's not the case. Fines of 10 million, 50 million, 200 million for these large organizations. This is a very small part of their global turnover. So I think initially there was the big scare, and now it calmed down a bit. These companies understand that the fine itself is manageable. I think it's more the reputational risk that might push some non-compliant companies into doing better, because each time you get this fine, it's published throughout the internet, and these companies get a connotation of being a bad actor. Now, if you think about Facebook, it doesn't at all have the same, let's say, status as it had in the beginning. In the beginning, it was a fun, cool company. Now people think more about Cambridge Analytica than about what Facebook does, what Facebook has as an advantage in your life. And so, will companies change in the future? I think that's of course the big question for Profile. And Are we the solution that will be adopted on a global scale next year? Will it take another 10 years for companies to adopt solutions like Profila, or will they never? So I think a part of what will make companies do it is, of course, the reputational risk, but I don't think that's the right thing to do. Just because you're scared of your reputation, you will treat people better. I think there's already companies out there that are open for a new model. Problem is, and that's what we also find in our sales activities, resources. I think it's easy, like you said, to do the same and to just continue doing the same and using the same platforms because you already have an account and you already know how it works. And maybe you didn't even get a fine, and maybe your company didn't even get some reputational damage. So why would you change? So I think you really need these visionaries in new company. It doesn't have to be a new company. You need a visionary within a company who has sufficient power to say, okay, now I'm going to allocate a part of my resources for this. Now I'm going to look for the internal stakeholders who are on board, and even not just do it as a let's say GDPR exercise, or not just do it because it's the right thing, but you could do it as a commercial advantage. If you come out now as a company and you say, this is how we're going to treat our individual customers, we are going to listen to them, we're going to give them the steering wheel to decide what content of us they receive, where they receive it on, how frequent they receive it, and we're going to make a completely personalized experience that is unheard of. I think this is a commercial advantage.
Yeah.
So
on our first point, I think our biggest competitor is inertia, companies just doing it, and we've actually had brands say it, well, everyone's on Instagram. They didn't show any enthusiasm for being on Instagram. Everyone's there. That's what they are. And I think the most sophisticated marketing companies will get the most out of Profila, because if they're getting access to real insights about me, about let's say my travel preferences, and they can tailor their thousands of different offerings to exactly the 10 that are relevant for me, they're simply going to sell me more. But that takes a level of sophistication in a marketing organization. So I think the best companies will be able to use Profila to the greatest extent and the greatest effectiveness.
Yeah, I think that's been our journey too, and is understanding even what Profila is, and it's I'm not ashamed to say it, because we've evolved through so many different thought principles, and now we know exactly what we're offering. It's a totally new approach to understanding your customer and then communicating with them privately. So we call it personal data relationships, and we're changing the business model for companies where we're much more focused on that whole retention lifetime value principle than the default in marketing nowadays, which seems to be acquisition at all costs, acquisition and revenue. Versus if you're looking at companies that are maturing and realizing, even in downturns or when there's these black swan events, that your existing customers are the ones who actually like your brand. They spend money with you, and yet you don't spend as much time with them or respect them as much as you should, because you're still tracking them, you're still irritating them on every channel possible, trying to throw ads at them just to buy more and more and more. And I think like you said, Luke, the progressive brands, I like to call them, who start having a bit of a human, mindset again, will start moving away from this purely programmatic and purely automated high volume approach and going back to, private. And private is a good word too, because if you look at private clubs, or I'm on a private list, and it's an exclusivity thing, and we've missed that, I think, in the market, because I know people, when I pitch and talk to them, it's like, yeah, I buy this product all the time, but do you think they know me? Do you think they know, my preferences? They don't. You give the best Lego example all the time, so give us that example, Luke, and then we'll wrap up for this session.
I've obviously loved Legos my entire life, and it's nice being an adult, because then you can still love them, but still have the money to actually buy stuff. I get 2 or 3 emails a week from them because I'm a member of the VIP club, so very exclusive. But they don't know anything about me. They don't know that all I care about is the Star Wars stuff. Yet most of their emails are completely irrelevant for me. But my only choice is to keep getting them or unsubscribe. That's the only choice they give me. If instead I said, if you every 3 months sent me whatever the new $400 Star Wars Lego set is, and let me buy it before the public can, I'm going to buy it. and you're going to get more money out of me. But now it's just like, oh, I got to go through the Lego emails again and say a lot of things that just are not relevant for me. So that's a very clear example where I'm told that I'm part of a VIP, but they don't know enough about me to actually treat me as a VIP.
Exactly, and they don't give you choice to flex, to have a different change and preference and so on.
But no,
going forward.
Just as an example, I got an email from New Balance. Like, I love New Balance shoes. I have 3 pairs, so not that much. I'm not a woman with 30 or 40 pairs. Not that guys cannot have 30 or 40 pairs. But so I love New Balance shoes. I have about, let's say, 20 emails from them a month. So if you calculate that on the year, that's about 240 emails. Now, I only have 3 pairs, and they know that because they sold me the 3 pairs. And so they go out of rotation, maybe like every 3 or 4 months that I buy like another pair. But it's always the same one. It's like the 574 or the 997. So that also they know. But still, I get 240 emails a year with shoes that are completely out of my preference. They'll send me the same shoe also a week after I bought it. So you see there that they don't at all put any effort into, okay, who is Michiel as a customer of ours? And I love them. This would be one of the brands that I would put on my Profila, and I would inform of how I want this relationship to look like. But it's clear that they don't. And then indeed, like Luke just said, I just clicked unsubscribe to see what modular or what options I would receive, and it's just, please exclude me from all email communications. And that's not what I want. That's not at all what I want, because I will buy from an email message from them if I am ready to buy, which is 3 times a year instead of 240 times a year.
I think there's two kind of overarching aspects of kind of the current paradigm that enforce that. First, each additional email costs them almost nothing. So why not send it? The marginal cost for digital distribution very quickly goes to 0. And the second thing is what they can measure is not the most important thing. They can't measure how annoyed you are. They can't do that, therefore they don't care about that. All they can measure is click rates, open rates, things like that. Those are the metrics they have, but that doesn't actually tell them anything. But it's because it's what they can measure, therefore that's what they think is important. And this happens with every organization. Is tell me what you measure, and that's what I'll tell you what you care about. But it's in many ways not the most important thing. So if we can change that idea of, okay, if I can capture more sentiment about those emails and see what percentage is annoyed, okay, what can I do to respond to that? But right now they can't measure that, therefore they do not care about your annoyance of getting those emails. Because again, they've only given you one choice: keep getting them or unsubscribe. And the transaction cost is paid by you, not by them.
Absolutely.
And that's almost all marketing right now.
We're going to have a good session on this in another call, but I'll wrap that little thread up with, when I got into advertising, because funny enough, none of us as co-founders are in the ad tech space, but we've learned it. Okay. And I was amazed that people are happy with 4 to 12% click through, on an ad. You spend so much time and money, and they're happy with half a second of attention on an ad in a feed, and that's, to me, is like crazy. Why would you be happy with that as a brand? So our absolute North Star is 100% attention and 100% click-through, because if I've chosen to see, like Michiel said, 3 ads a year, I will look at them and I'll probably buy all 3, if there's a good offer tailored to me, and that's 100% conversion. So I think we're challenging mindsets, which is making our challenge harder. As Luke said, we're changing behavior of people. And I'd love to, in the next podcast, have a session around the consumer behavior of controlling your data versus currently we throw it away. Because what Michiel just said is such valuable data, but how does Michiel control it is what we're trying to get right in Profila. So telling New Balance just at the right time, telling Lego just at the right time that, hey, it's my seasonal budget's there, I can now buy my sneakers or my Lego, in the next month. So flood me with content and I'll consume it all. Make a choice, but then let me have a month to go build the one, because if you show me another one, I'm going to get FOMO, so it's it's those simple concepts of human nature that we're trying to bring back in. But yeah, let's I think close out the call just with some closing statements from you guys on where do you see us as Profila in the future? Just what's your personal dream for it? It can be bold, it can be brash, and it can be realistic. You choose.
I think for me, the thing I think about the most is that when my Profila is the most accurate, authentic, and valuable information about me, and I can influence my experience outside of Profila, that Facebook now is only going to show me relevant ads because I've linked my Profila, or the ads I see on Paramount Plus when I'm streaming shows are also completely relevant for me because I've linked my Profila to Paramount Plus or any other streaming, so that we become a utility. We are a utility for individuals. Yep. And it's just the way business is done. That if you're a professional company and you want to show relevant ads, if you want to sell ads to companies, you need to say, yes, we're integrated with Profila, because then those brands know that if I put my ads on Paramount Plus, they're going to reach the people that are actually it's relevant for, whether it's interest or geography or whatever. And it just becomes a utility that's just part of the new internet, a better internet, the Web 5, Web 9, whatever it is, internets, that it's just something you have, it's something you do, it's something you enjoy answering questions about yourself, insights about yourself, and you know that all the places it's linked to, you control the flow of information, you control the cadence, and the world has now basically been personalized to your needs. But even along those lines, so again, going into the politics of it, I have a feature I've never actually talked to you guys about called Bubble, which is the idea of, okay, I've kind of crafted my world, but I want to get out of my bubble a little bit. So bring in some new stuff of things, maybe some new political commentary or some new kind of products that may be interesting to me that I never thought of before, and let me also control that. So it's not the extreme political view, but it's kind of, who are the smart people that I don't agree with, but I'd love to read their stuff. So I think it's something where you can control your environment, but also be able to expand it in a very safe and structured way.
Almost getting out of your echo chamber. Yeah, I love that. And everything you've said, Luke, was a great summary, because I was actually chatting to an individual last night who's in a startup for a power utility, where just simple, but great tools of measuring how much power consumption your house uses. That's all personal data, and we know already from surveillance that you can track movements of people in a house just through their power consumption. So I said to him, go to your settings section, and that's where you'll see Profila in the future.
For devices
exactly. So that I can own my data on that app, but I can move it to 10 other similar apps if I want to.
My dishwasher only reports to me.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you change your dishwasher, it still reports to you. Yeah. And just quickly expanding on that, where I see the vision too going is like a control panel or a utility that spreads across the internet. And interestingly, the internet was apparently, and websites, when I speak to Miko, was first meant to be personalized direct to the individual. Then they started going for mass personalization or grouping of people marketing, versus if I land on Apple's page, I see content only that I want to see. So it is capable, it's possible, and that's what we're trying to get towards, is not only in a walled garden approach, in our first instance, that's what we're building, but the capability behind Profila will help it, like Luke says, to be extensible to any app, to any website in the future, so that your decisions flow with
I'll give you an example of that. I love the website Mac Rumors, which is, again, obviously Apple focused. They have a buying guide on there, which can basically tell you, is it the right time to buy a new iMac, based on the normal production cycles of how often they update that product and what's coming up, and should I wait another month because then it'll be done. Well, imagine if that the products that I looked at, I was looking at Mac Mini yesterday on their site to see what the flow is. That's an insight that now is mine. So when I go to Apple's sites, they're saying, hey, here's our best offer for a Mac Mini.
Correct.
And it's done programmatically, or because I've consented to these sort of things, that it's Apple's site is saying, we know the product you want to do because you told us, and it's not creepy because you told us, and here's our best offer for this.
Absolutely.
For your situation.
It was funny because I follow Kara Swisher and so on their podcast, and she said the exact same thing last year in the cast. Is I bought every Apple device for 10, 20, 30 years. They know me personally. She knows Tim Cook. But when she goes to the Apple site, she still sees every other device for sale, even ones she's had before and thrown away, which is just ridiculous. So there's a paradigm shift coming as we talk about it, and that's our challenge from a design perspective on user behavior, but it's also our challenge from a technology approach. But fundamental to all of that, and I'll jump over to Michiel now, is our privacy by design, because everything only works if you've got privacy and choice. Yeah, and that has to somehow be enforced through behavior and technically in the future, and that's our roadmap. So, Michiel, any thoughts on that for the future?
But yeah, where I see Profile, it's just I think that there's a huge difference between physically walking through a city and in shops and enjoying brands and buying products or browsing things, and then being on the internet and being completely tracked. So if you would explain this to somebody who doesn't know the internet, it seems to be a very inefficient version that we have now, where you as an individual are completely tracked and you have like no way of being anonymous except VPN or dark browsers or whatever. And so I truly believe that a solution like this will come. Will it be next year? Will it take 10 years? Will it be Profile or not? I really hope that it is Profile, and I think we're all working very hard on it to be ready with the right product at the right time. But I believe this is a hole that needs to be filled, and I'm confident that we can do that.
Absolutely. Fantastic way to close it out. But yeah, Luke and Michiel, for me, it's been an awesome journey with two minds that challenged me, and we've had some great ups and downs, but that's the journey we're meant to be on. And what's common and consistent, though, is we all believe that this change has to happen. So thank you both for joining, and let's take it on to the
next
future.
time.
We'll speak to you soon. Cheers, everybody who's watching.
Bye,
Bye-bye.